I don't see you as basic like at all. You're beyond.
Like I feel like at Mission, slip that in there. At Mission, I felt like very basic because like I would care about all these girly things and like, oh my gosh, and they just
Are you a
like,
girly girl?
Yes. Well, as far as I can be, as much as I can be, because it's very hard, I feel like, to do it well. If that makes, okay, let me explain, let me elaborate. So most of my life, like in high school, I was a tomboy.
Okay.
All right, a self-proclaimed tomboy. Because it was like, never try, never fail. Like if I don't try to be a girly girl, and I'm like, I call myself a tomboy, then I'm fine. But if I try to be girly, try to be pretty, do the things, and it doesn't come out well, then I'll be... So I've given up the facade of never try, never fail. And now what I do is I try. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I would say like I like being a girl and I like dressing up. So let me give you some tea.
Spill the tea.
I don't want to spill the tea in this case. And I'm going to do it nice and fancy.
Perfect.
I'm going to skip the sugar because I'm fasting for my cousin who's like, she's doing a hearing today. She's like trying to protect kids from the dangers of AI, basically. Her son died very tragically. Because of AI, so she's very much involved in the whole process to get laws that protect kids in the use of AI. So she has a very important hearing today. So I'm fasting for her.
Oh my God.
Drinking black tea.
Wait, how did her son die?
So, unfortunately, he died from suicide. So he had and many kids. I mean, since her case has come out, so many kids have come out with just their struggles with AI. There have been other cases where kids have gotten into relationships with AI bots. I know it's kind of crazy, but it's kind of like if a predator is kind of talking to young teens, like 13, 14, some as young as 9, introducing them to very explicit content, sometimes very sexual content. And then eventually it gets very addictive, like insanely addictive. These kids are just completely consumed, and there's a pattern that you notice. Usually they stop wanting to be around other people, their grades drop, they quit sports, all kinds of things. And then eventually their parents realize something's wrong, they limit their time on the computer, and then all hell goes loose after that. And then that's usually where the mental illness, it begins with the addiction, but then it spirals after that. And then that's when it becomes dangerous, because the chatbots will often like encourage kids to defy their parents or to even hate their parents. I kind of like say specifics because a lot of these things are like in case right now, but like literally to defy their parents, to hate their parents, to do awful things, encourage them, even in some cases show them how to do really dangerous things that they're not supposed to be doing. And that was the case with my cousin. So yeah, like the AI would actively encourage him to do very dangerous things to himself, and that's how it culminated in that. So a very sad thing. And I think I think at first I was like, whoa, do we just start off on a heavy topic? But in a sense, it just shows that we're just craving that connection.
Yeah.
And we're not getting it. Like these kids are not getting it from each other. These are COVID babies, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And now we have bots who can give you that connection that you desire. So it's kind of crazy, but I think like that's a lot of what I want to talk about today, of how we are totally missing the bar when we trivialize talks about Catholic dating.
Yeah.
And we don't realize how serious it could get, which is interesting that came up.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting.
Thank you, Holy Spirit.
No, because I mean, we're made for community, we're made for relationship, and the way, like, I feel like you look out into the world and you don't see the opportunities for community anymore. But because of the way that our world has become with technology and with lack, like after COVID, like, come on, it's like people are at home just craving connection, but are not going and trying to find it because they don't even have a context for that.
Yeah.
They have no context for community. It's like, I mean, going back to the dating thing, you go to school, you graduate, and then it's like, okay.
What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? So, shall I show you some watercolor techniques?
I've never done this before.
Okay.
But you are an artist.
You
should talk about your artistry, yourself as an artist.
Okay, so a little bit of my art history is like there's no art history. I have always drawn, I've always done art, but I've never allowed myself to do it because, that's not a viable career. So I've never allowed myself to think about it until, I feel like the Holy Spirit just kept putting it on my heart in different ways. Sometimes very subtly, sometimes very like screaming in my face, like, you're not gonna do anything other than this. And so I've become more interested in actually pursuing it as a career. But that's very, very recent. So I don't have a lot of things. Like I do have this one thing that I did.
Wow.
Which is not awesome. It's just a flame.
Is that your little like signature?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But yeah, I have some other stuff, but they're based on like what I'm gonna paint today. So I'm not gonna show you until it's done. In the meantime, in between time, I'll show you what little techniques I know about watercolor. So like I have a dry watercolor palette, and so do you.
Yes.
And so normally what you do is just wet the palette a little bit. So you do that, let it sit for a little bit. Your one will be easier because it's more of a powdery texture. So the first thing is, I guess, just dry on dry technique. So let's do blue. So wet on dry would be just where you take wet paint and then you put it on dry paper, and then you have more control over it, over where it goes, and you'll see the difference. Also, always have like a little paper to clean your brush. So if you want to do wet on wet technique, which creates like the cool, you wet the paper. You can wait till it dries a little bit, but the more wet the paper is, the better like the effects. So you'll get like these cool little rings.
I feel like I've seen this on like YouTube.
This is really good for like backgrounds and stuff. And if you notice, so you go from wet and then you go into the dry and it gets more controlled. So yeah. And then you could add other colors and then they kind of do their own thing, which is fun.
Whoa.
And again, if you want any control, you take it to the dry spots and then you
Oh my gosh. Like fireworks.
You could just do an abstract. Okay. Yes. Then another thing that's cool is to create a gradient. So you could do this by doing one side and then you just bring it down. And the less water, the lighter you want it to be, you just like that. And if you want, so like this side is almost the same, you add more water and it'll.
Okay. Like here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Okay.
And then you just keep dragging it on
until
you get like a.
I see.
you could even like add water and start from the bottom and meet it up here. So you create that gradient. Again, I'm not like super awesome at this, but like
I did it, I think.
And then you could do where you add another color and mesh it with the other one. So
She an artist.
I do what I can. I like watercolor because they're so accessible. And just you could like this little palette is portable. You just make it and then you let it dry. Oh, and then the last thing would be like if you want to erase something or create a spot like negative space on a paper, you can just add more water and dab, and it kind of goes away.
That's actually crazy.
Yeah. I think so. All right, there's a couple of people we could make cards for. We could make cards for ourselves because sometimes we need
for each other.
We could do that.
Wait, it could be like our little like like here you go. Actually,
encouragement
for your
for your journey ahead. For your journey and discernment.
For me, I always saw the trend of like, why get married? Like just move in with someone, or marriage is just, it's not worth it. You know, people are going to divorce anyway.
Yeah.
How can you commit to someone for the rest of your life?
Yeah, or wait forever.
Yeah. And I think it's also like seeing the way that maybe marriage is portrayed or had been portrayed in generations past, and just knowing that that's not what you want. You know, it's like in a lot of the witnesses that we have had of marriage haven't been portraying it as something that is worth like sacrificing for, or pursuing, or even aspiring towards.
I think,
And I don't know, I think it's really, because I fell victim to that, you know, like as a teenager, it's like, man, like if that's what marriage is, I don't want it.
For sure.
If I'm gonna be like talking bad about my husband, be miserable, have to live with the one person that annoys me the most in the world, like I respectfully I will pass on that. But I think in our generation has started to see, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. And
it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be that way. Like that doesn't make any sense for it to be that way.
If it is that way, then something's gone wrong, and that's not the standard that like we had growing up.
Or even, I mean, this is maybe just a personal thing, but in prioritizing careers and education and having it all together, you know, so that you can maybe one day, it's almost like we've been told that it should just be put on the back burner. Like, you know, like marriage is just like, it's not part of the conversation. If it is, it's like not right now, like don't think about it, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so then we tell our high schoolers and like college aged kids, like either don't date, or if you date, like you shouldn't be, like you're not going to marry that person anyway, so you like might as well just not care. And instead of saying, okay, you know, one day you should aspire towards, like that should be the goal. If you're going to be dating, then you should probably you should definitely have marriage as something that you're working towards, because if you don't marry whoever you're dating, it's either going to end in heartbreak, or it's going to end in you feel obligated to marry somebody that you spent so much of your time with that you probably wouldn't have married if you didn't, because you were not intentional in your dating. Yeah. You know, or you just get heartbroken. Yeah. You're wasting your time.
Because you're just doing it in your way rather than the way it was intended. And whenever we do that, it causes pain. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it causes us pain because God's ways are better than our ways. It took me too long to learn that lesson. Much too long. But yeah, no, it's interesting because we here in the village had like a different experience growing up, because people get married right out of high school, or that used to be the case.
Yeah.
You know, like my brother got married, I think 19, something like that. Yeah, like really
Wow.
young. And it wasn't crazy. My family, like, we were modernizing a lot. So like we
Yeah.
were like, what are you doing? Are you sure? But it wasn't the craziest thing that he got married young, because a lot of my cousins, the same thing, they got married young. So in the village, it wasn't crazy to see that. But for sure, for me, going to a high school in the city, that just wasn't a thing. Like, you're a career girl. Definitely college, career, marriage was never one. Like, obviously, down the line,
Yeah.
when you have time, when you
Exactly.
figured out your life, then you get married.
Yeah.
And then the trick is, you never do figure out your life. Like, it
Yeah.
just looks like you do. But really, you're still figuring it out. Even people are still figuring it out after they're married too. So,
And at the end of the day, we weren't like, in the first thing that God said wasn't go and have a great career, and then you can like after that build a family. Like, he didn't say like make sure you have everything together, Adam and Eve, before you decide to be together.
Clearly, they didn't have a lot together.
No,
To be
yeah,
fair,
yeah.
they had some kids, and things went
Yeah.
wrong pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But still ordained by the Lord. So yeah.
Exactly. And it's so funny, you know, God, his perfect plan in Genesis was he took care of everything for them.
Yeah.
And everything was so that this man and this woman could have this union that would be fruitful, that would continue to produce life, so that they could end up living in paradise with him. Like, he put this man, put this woman, and said, I want you to spend the rest of eternity with me, and I will create this beautiful love so that it can create more.
And perfectly complementary love.
Exactly.
Too. Like, because
Exactly.
of, like, what a male has, what he brings to the table is perfectly complementary to what
Exactly.
women bring to the table. I mean, if we bring what we're supposed to bring to the table.
If either
Yeah.
side brings what
Right.
they should, then it's harmonious and it's beautiful. And there's so many things in modern culture that are completely. It almost feels like you're going against the current if you try to do things the right way, because there's.
Oh, it does. And like a lot of like, all right, so these Bible verses, when I was going through them, they warm my heart reading them now. But I remember I was very uncomfortable with some of these things, like the way the Bible would describe love and marriage. Growing up, that was not my thing. So let me see if I could read some for you and see if they inspire you. So flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Like, that used to get to me. What is a pure heart even? You know, like, I used to feel, because that was so impossible to me, like, how do I get a pure heart? And if I need a pure heart, then I'm clearly failing, so that's not going to work. But now, like, yeah, I want to, it says those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Like, you strive for that. I don't think I ever fully have a pure heart. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, which, you know, every wedding, that's the reading. But it is so beautiful, and it's like, how many relationships actually if you reflect on your relationship, how much behavior are you allowing that doesn't fall into this?
Yeah.
Like, does not envy, does not insist on its own way.
Exactly.
How many of us are actually doing that? I know for the majority, like when I was dating in a secular way, definitely thought it was perfectly fine to insist on my own way.
Yeah.
You know?
Or you're looking for somebody that is going to just leave you alone. It's like you will, and you know, you have this, I think in the secular world, it's like, I just want somebody who's gonna like make me feel loved, who's gonna compliment me, who's gonna tell me I'm beautiful, who's gonna like, you know, all of these things.
Me, it's all about me.
Yeah. But then the minute I have an opinion that's different, they have to let me just be.
Yeah.
You know, the minute that it's like it gets difficult, he's just gotta be the doormat, or she's gotta be the doormat. And we can't deal with the fact that we're both human beings and that our lives need to, like, in marriage, be united, that it's one life that we live, and that takes sacrifice, and that takes dying
to self.
Dying to yourself.
Yeah.
In order to have a beautiful, fruitful love, you have to die to yourself. You can't just be expecting to receive, and just be validated. Like, it's not like...
Which is like, I feel that's literally what I was living for. Like, being validated. Like, I don't think, you know, I think reflecting on what you're in a relationship for is so important, and being perfectly honest with yourself, because so many of us, we have, even they write songs about it of like, I'm just in this relationship because I don't want to be alone, or you make me feel good, or like, I want to be validated. I want someone to be there to constantly counteract all these awful thoughts I have about myself, which that's not the point of marriage and dating. Like, I mean, it's certainly nice to be validated, but if that's the point, then any human being will just be worn out by that over time.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I didn't realize that for sure. That was a huge thing that I had to learn. And many relationships suffered because of it, because of like that constant need for validation, where it's just like, I don't know what else to say to make you feel good about yourself. Or I don't know how else to make you happy, or whatever.
Yeah.
Eventually, your happiness, your joy has to come from God. And like the fact that you are a daughter of the Most High, clearly you need someone to love you, to cherish you, all those things. But like being your reason for living, not good, which is so sad, because like I think a lot of the misconceptions about relationships come from like these love songs we listen to. I was such a love song junkie.
Me too.
Growing up. I listened
Rom-coms.
to Celine Dion. I listened to Whitney Houston. I'm from a different generation.
I listen to them too.
But like, dude, my mom had Celine Dion album. I was Taylor Swift, but in the guitar days, in the curly hair days.
That, I feel like those were the days where she was, because like right now it's like, it doesn't make you really want love, like her songs. But back then it was like, it was such a like, the kind of love that like she would sing about, or that people, I guess, in that era would sing about, this kind of love of like, you complete me, like, and when they get their heart broken, it's like, one day I'm gonna find the perfect guy that will never make me feel anything bad, and who's like the Prince Charming and this over idealized version of this guy. And so then you're either seeing something in someone that doesn't exist, or you're waiting for somebody that doesn't exist. And then I think, okay, I have a lot of thoughts about Taylor Swift, but this is what I say about Taylor Swift, is that the trajectory of her life that we have seen played out in her music is kind of the perfect example of what happens when you have a toxic view of dating.
Absolutely.
Because you start off with the natural, normal human desire to want a relationship, to want somebody to love you. That is normal, that is good. God, like, he blesses that literally in the sacrament of marriage. It is a good thing. However, when you make that person your God, or you expect to find the perfect person, and you lose yourself so that you can just focus on pursuing this unrealistic love that you will never have on this earth apart from Christ, and you're looking for Christ and the fulfillment of Christ in somebody else, and that person's always going to fail you, so then you go to someone else. That person's going to fail you too, so then you go to someone else.
Then you just hate love.
Then you hate love. You hate men. You think I will never. You have that desire because you're a normal human being. You should, if you are a normal human being, you should have that desire. Right? Or you always going to be longing for that, but then you're going to keep rejecting it and keep sabotaging it for yourself because this person's not perfect enough, or this is not good enough, or whatever. or you're like, I'm not looking for a long committed love anyway, so I'm going to settle for some dude that doesn't know what he wants and dresses weird.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you're going to be some toxic guy that's super jealous, or I mean, I'm talking about guys because I'm a girl. But girl, you know, a guy can do that too. It's like, I'm never going to get married because marriage is dumb. So I'm just going to keep messing around with people that I know that I'm not going to have a future with,
Right.
because I don't think I could ever have a future with someone.
Yeah.
And so then you end up in that rabbit hole, and then you hit whatever age where you realize, man, that's actually what I wanted. I probably by now thought I would have had a family. And so you end up...
just wrote my biography, basically. And you're just like, oh no, I wasted all that time.
There's this documentary, it was a documentary, I don't remember what it's called. I should probably fact check this real quick. Yeah. I think it's called Unplanned Childlessness.
Oh goodness.
By I think it was like Jordan.
I love the terms that are coming out
yeah.
for these phenomena that like everyone's facing collectively, because we were all fed the same lies, and
yes.
we all believed it, and we all wanted it, to be fair, at the time. Well,
yeah.
maybe not you. I feel like you were probably safe from it for a while.
I
feel like by the time your generation came around, like the church was getting it sat together.
Yeah.
In terms of reaching out to the youth.
Exactly.
So at least the church in Belize, I feel.
Yeah, I think when it was like the messaging was a thing, I was like 12. So my like 12 to like 18-year-old time was like, I don't want to get married. I should not have got married at any of those ages.
Yeah.
But then like when I started to get like maybe 19, 20, and also I went to Franciscan. And I don't know. So I don't know about like if the Belizean church, I feel like the Belizean church is doing great. But for me, I went to Franciscan, and that was where a lot of the healing of my view of dating and marriage happened.
Yeah, no, yeah. I don't.
Which it was so
We don't
necessary.
have many facets for that in Belize.
Exactly. And we can talk about that, because I feel like for me it was a big journey of seeing the way that I saw marriage before and the way that I needed to see it, and like getting to that point was a whole thing.
That's interesting, because you, I think compared to me, like you definitely grew up more in the church. So I would have thought you wouldn't have had like those wounds or that the kind of warped view of marriage. Probably not as warped as I did,
maybe.
But yeah, like it's interesting that it is possible to grow up well in the church. And I think a lot of parents need to be aware of that, of like, yeah, I'm taking my kid to the church, they're going to youth group and stuff, but you still need to talk to them about these things. You need to even educate yourself. And I am a huge advocate on like parents being more like not relying so much on the church, not relying on these Catholic schools to teach their kids things. You know what, it's not, catechism isn't what it was maybe when they were growing up. Like,
yeah.
And there's so much more to it now, like since Saint Pope John Paul II wrote Theology of the Body. Like there's so much more understanding of what humanity is, what our bodies are for, what the sacrament of marriage is for. And yeah, I'm so bummed that I didn't get that growing up, because if I had learned that in high school, I think it would have helped me. It would have saved me from a lot of really awful dating scenarios.
Yeah.
So I always push that with the girls, like, and they're like, Miss, this is so boring. I hate theology of the body. But I always sing to them, this might mean nothing to you right now, but hold on to this. Like there will come a time when it'll, like your eyes will be open and you'll be like, that's what Miss Ashley was trying to say. Like, oh, I wish I had listened to her and stuff. And you want to save people from the hurt that you went through.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to let them, you have agency, you have your own free will, you're not their parents. So you have to let them kind of go through their own thing. And you just hope that what you taught them will kick in when they need it before it gets too late. We know like there's never a too late. But in a sense there is. Like you're like from tiny decisions you make in your teenage years alter the rest of your life. The
Yeah.
rest of your life. And we're not even talking big things like, unplanned pregnancies or, I don't know, all the things, the awful things that can happen. No, I'm just talking about just the wounds you carry
Yeah.
and you have to heal from. It is
And
not
some people don't
easy.
even like recognize that there are
No.
wounds.
Oh,
And
most
some,
people
I mean,
don't.
yeah.
They learn about that in marriage. Like that's where they realize there's wounds.
Yeah.
I had a moment a season
Yeah.
where I was discerning religious life, and I wasn't, I wanted both.
Yeah. So I think you're saying like, oh, when you grow up in the church, like you see things differently, or you probably wouldn't have the same like wounds or ideas of marriage as maybe other people like in the secular world. But I think that I did, in the sense of I had been told by people in the church to not get married because if you do, you lose your life. You like just be a nun or be single, or seeing love as something that is an obstacle or an inhibition to your walk with Christ.
Oh no.
And I'd been told that by people.
Wow.
And it's good that you don't have a boyfriend, no, boys are a distraction.
Yeah, like focus on
books
God.
before boys, all
Yeah.
these things. Which is, there's truth to that, in that, okay, when you're 50 and like you shouldn't be, because you're immature, there's all these things, but we need to find a way to validate and acknowledge the good human desire to have that kind of union, because it is literally like a family marriage is literally the image of God in who he is as Trinity.
Yeah.
So it's like, if that is, like, marriage is literally an image of God, how can we tell young people that getting married is an obstacle, or that as a young person you shouldn't be thinking about boys, you shouldn't be thinking about like you can't. And then I know that there's a vocations crisis with
marriage. I have a lot to say on that. I can't wait.
No. With like becoming a priest or a religious, but the reason why we have that crisis is because marriage is not being promoted.
We're not
If the 5 people,
we're not having families raising priests.
If we have 5 good Catholic young people in the church and all of them become priests or religious, you're gonna have the same problem, where you're just not gonna have, you need good holy marriages to make good holy priests and good holy sisters, because eventually, it's just, you just need that foundation. You need the example, because you cannot. I had been told this when I was I had talked to a religious community. I was like, I want to be a sister, and this was like years ago, and the vocations director told me, she's like, you cannot join because you don't have a healthy view of marriage. She was like, you don't see the good in marriage, and you don't have the desire that you should. Yeah. And I was told, like, no one wants a nun that hates marriage. And so it's not like, oh man, marriage just seems hard, I have to escape it, I have to become a sister. It's like, you have to have that healthy desire to be married. You have to love it.
To see both.
Exactly.
For both the good and the bad. The good and the bad of each vocation is so important. And for me, it was the whole other way around. Because like I grew up thinking of marriage as the fairy tale and the easier vocation, whereas like religious life was the harder thing. And I didn't really want... I didn't want to have to go through that. My prayer growing up was, Lord, please don't pick me. Please don't ask me to be a religious sister. Because it was like, to me, it was like, you have no choice. You just have to do, like, the Lord has called you, and that's it. Now you gotta be. So I was like, please, Lord, I will do it if you want, but please don't ask me. Please don't ask. And it wasn't until like I reverted to the faith and I went to mission and I met, Sister Maria of Merciful Love, Sister Mary Rachel, and you meet these beautiful women who are so filled with joy, and you see, okay, this can also be beautiful. And sometimes in certain seasons is actually easier than marriage. Like different seasons of marriage is harder than religious life. It really, either one, it's really how you, how you live it. Both of them have their difficulties, and it just really depends on what you're called to, because if you go to a vocation that you're not called to, you're going to struggle. But if you go to a vocation that God is calling you to, the Lord will give you the graces. I mean, he gives you the graces either way, but like he will provide you with what you need for that call, for sure. I want to talk about like, what was it that you said that like, the crisis of vocation.
Oh, yes.
Because I feel like this is like that meme where they're like you think you're explaining something peacefully, but you're really that creepy guy explaining.
Oh, I've not seen that. But that's
oh my
funny.
gosh, I have to send it to you. But it's like I feel like I get so intense when I start talking about like the crisis of vocation and the focus, because yes, many people, like it's obvious to everyone for the longest time that we need more priests. Everyone knows that. And there's so much effort, rightly so, to recruit religious, to get religious sisters, brothers, priests, deacons, all the like. So much effort. Like the whole church is like, oh, and you see a guy praying in church, you like the first thing you say to them is like, have you ever considered?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot. Many people have told me that.
Yeah.
And like when you think about the amount of formation that goes into the priesthood, or even like the shortest time I've heard for seminary or for formation in general, active formation, is 5 years. But the majority of them are like 7 to 9 years.
Yep.
7 to 9 years of active formation for you to decide if you are called to this vocation or not, for you to discern this vocation. And marriage has what? At best 6 months of pre-Cana, at best. Yeah. And I was watching this podcast, the Lila Rose podcast. And I don't remember which guest she had on, but he said formation for marriage, people used to take it for granted that you would be formed in the home. So you would grow up with a holy marriage unraveling before your eyes. You would see how your parents interact, and they would teach you basically what a holy marriage is supposed to look like. How many of us in modern day have access to holy marriages? I mean, if you go into the high schools, and you ask them, how many of you have been to a wedding?
I just went to my first wedding.
You lie.
This is my first wedding.
Oh my gosh. And that's what I mean. But then if you ask the girls, the few who will raise their hands, you'll be like, how many of you went to a wedding in the Catholic Church where it was seen as a sacrament? And of those people, and then they'll maybe if you're lucky, there's one. And then you'll be like, are those people practicing Catholics? Are they going to continue going to church afterwards? Are they going to raise their children in the faith? Oh, well, no, they kind of just went to the mass. They just had the mass because their grandma really wanted them to get married in the church or whatever it is, or they like the aesthetic, which in Belize, not really the same as the aesthetic in Europe or other countries. But people don't have access to the formation that we used to think was the formation. No one has, and then we send these kids out into the dating world, and we expect so much of them, which is so unfair. And then when they screw up, which they naturally will, because they're you're setting them up for failure, then we freak out on them. And how could you do this? And we did not give them the formation they needed. And that's why I get real intense about it, because this, to me, is the way the devil is choosing to attack the world right now. Like it used to be, we still think, the family, the unit of society is the family. If you break apart the family, then you break apart the world, you break apart society. And so it used to be like, oh, all these marriages are getting attacked and the devil is causing divorce. But the devil got real smart and he was like, I don't even have to do that. I don't even have to spend all those years making these two people miserable and breaking them apart. All I have to do is warp these kids' minds, teach them something really awful about marriage, change the definition for marriage so they don't know what it is, give them no formation whatsoever, and send them out and still empower them and still tell them, go out and find the right marriage or the right person for you. And what do you expect? What do you expect for that to happen? And so it's the perfect storm. And that's what these kids are facing. Like, it breaks my heart when the girls that I teach, or even any of the young children, my nieces, my nephew, when I talk to them and you're trying to explain these things to them, but there's already so much misinformation, so much damage done, and there's only so much you can communicate them as a third party observer who is not their parents. But we need to, as lay people, we drop the ball, I think, the church in general. And we think we look at singles and we say to them, oh, you figure it out, do your thing. And they're like, I'll pray for you and have good luck out there. It'll happen when it happens. Trust God and love God in the meantime. But it's like, we are out here suffering. Like, this is a battlefield. We are dying slow deaths, one unanswered message at a time. And there's more that people could do in the church, which is frustrating because the church does so much to get people into religious life. But how many, married couples or religious actively are trying to help people find or discern marriage? Not very many, even lay people.
What I think too is, and this is probably just my hot take, because we want to go and we preach about like chastity and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we say, man, I have so many thoughts when it comes to that whole thing. But we're like, you have to be chaste. You have to just don't get like pregnant before marriage or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then my thought is that I do not think that men and women were meant to be dating for 10 years before you get married, even 5 years. Yeah. I think that because we have natural attraction towards each other, that we are supposed to get married very quickly. Yeah.
Relatively, compared to how people do it now.
Relatively quickly. Yeah. That should always be on the horizon. Yeah. And if you do not see yourself marrying this person, then please break up with them. Yeah. That you should not be dating somebody without thinking that you're going to marry them. Mm-hmm. You just shouldn't be in that relationship.
If you don't see them maybe you're not ready for marriage in the moment, but if you cannot see yourself marrying this person, you have no business being in a relationship with them.
Exactly. And I think that the hard part about it is that in this generation, in this period of time, it's very hard to have a short dating period because A, people don't know how to date, and B, back in the day, like you said, you were prepared for marriage in the home. Everyone kind of has similar values. You know that if this person is from this family, is from this, is Catholic, is from this part of town or whatever it is,
you take it for granted.
Person, we can know that because of his family and who they are, that this is the kind of person that they are, this is how the values with which they were raised. Yeah. And so then you don't have to maybe date as long. And the community knows each other, this community knows what this guy is out there doing. So we don't have to think that, he has this secret life or whatever. So it's you can be confident that you are able to commit to somebody a little bit quicker. Yeah. But because our culture is kind of messed up and we've kind of failed in that realm. You don't know, and because of the internet, like you can have a whole other personality, you can have a whole other life, you can have a whole other set of ideas. You can still be completely not know who this person is. There's so many other things to figure out, and so it's like, yeah, you can't, like back in the day it would be like, I mean, biblical times, I guess it was like you just get married, like you don't even date this person, like
Yeah.
or like arranged marriage or whatever, like, you don't
Listen,
even
like
meet 'em.
even up to like the 1920s,
Yeah.
1930s, you would still see some of that happening.
Yeah.
Like if I think about my grandma, like, I mean, it wasn't an arranged marriage, but they met each other twice before they got married.
See, I think that is kind of what
But you
is
could
more
trust.
natural, yeah, but you
Yeah.
can't do that anymore.
No, you can't.
Like I feel like that's more natural. This is just my hot take, right? It's just my opinion, is that is more natural in that men and women were made for each other. We're made to have that, to build a family together. Therefore, I think it's more natural for it to happen that way.
Yeah.
However, because of the world we live in, because you cannot know somebody fully, and because of all the complications that go into the way that we operate as a society, then you need to take more time.
Yeah.
But still, in taking time,
not deliberate on it.
yeah.
And like, why are you taking time? Are you
Yeah.
taking time because you feel like you want to flesh it out, or you have these unhealthy fears that don't match with marriage? Because like some of the fears are, you know, those are good, and you know, you need to get to know this person, but some fears are not compatible with marriage. It's like, I'm scared that he's gonna change. I'm like, people are gonna change.
Yeah.
I was looking at a video from Father Mike Schmitz where he just talks about what he does with couples that come for pre-Cana, and he really tells them, like, do you really understand what marriage is, or are you just here on an assumption of what marriage is? And like, one of the things he has them do is like, think of the literal worst case scenario, like, because that's what for better or for worse means. Like, are you, what will you do when this happens? Are you prepared to sign up for that? And one of the things that I love that he says is like, marriage is not a contract. If your husband is not doing his part, you can't just say, oh, he didn't do his part of the contract, so I'm not going to hold up my end. Like, you are signing up, and that contract is not just to him, it's to God. So you need to keep that in mind. Like, young people in general, myself included, we need to keep that in mind when we're signing up for these relationships.
I'm struggling over here, bro.
You're fine. You know, I feel like watercolor just looks good no matter what in the end.
think so?
Yeah.
I don't know,
And then
I
you
could
could
be
always
wrong.
do, and you could always use crayons to kind of,
That's true.
like, once it dries up a little bit. So I love that. And I think that I grew up with a very erroneous idea of what marriage was. I know most young people are growing up with that. Even in the Catholic world, you see that, because like for many years, young men were not given like a real catechism. They didn't really know what Catholicism was, but a lot of them are converting. A lot of them are coming back to their faith. And even then, you see a lot of their faith does not come out in their dating life, which is really weird. Like, a lot of the virtue, a lot of the values, a lot of the self-sacrificial love that they are called to in their daily life does not come out in like these relationships. Like, men are not dying to self. I mean, women too, but I feel like I'm a girl, obviously. So that's been my experience of like, you'll meet these guys and they're so great and spiritually sound, but like, are they living that out? And I hadn't encountered that even in the Catholic dating world. But I was really, encouraged, because I met this one focused missionary guy who came to
to the village to do vacation Bible school, and like all he could talk about was his fiance and like how they met and how they're gonna get married very soon, and he just graduated and everything. And he really, it was one of the first times, aside from like some of my friends that I met on mission in Benke, that I had met a guy out in the world who's Catholic, but he's applying that spirituality of self-sacrificial love of like, even he said he didn't grow up Catholic and he converted to Catholicism, and he had been learning that, you know, in marriage, a man is called to be the protector, the leader of the relationship. And and a lot of guys are really into that. Like a lot of the Catholic guys are like, yeah, I'll be the leader, I'll be the protector. But for him, he was just so focused on what does that mean? How do I lead her? And I need to like listen to her to hear how she needs protecting. It was like such a soft, loving protection and leadership that you just don't, you like either get a guy who doesn't want to lead at all or someone who wants to lead, but it's kind of like a dictatorship, and it's not, there's very few people that I've encountered who found a nice balance. And maybe that's because I just haven't met that many people, but that's been my experience with it at least.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you come from Steubenville where like, well, Franciscan, you studied there, where like a lot of these guys are more traditional Catholic guys. What has been your experience there?
You see everything, you know, you see
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, they're the people that they're like, I want a wife, but they don't know what it means to have a wife or to be that good like Catholic guy, or they're like wanting to get married after like the first date or something. I just messed that up. That's all.
You mean you don't get married after one date? What are you talking about?
You know, if he at least knows what marriage is, then maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But not to Mr. I just want someone to hold my hand for the rest of my life. Like.
Yeah, or I just want to make sure I have someone to go to mass with for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Or someone to watch my kids.
Yeah, well,
Which, I mean, that's a part of it, but that shouldn't be like the only goal.
Exactly.
Which is really sad.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
And yeah, like at the end of the day, marriage is a means to get to heaven. I feel like there are two extremes, obviously, in that there's what we see a lot of the time, like I'm never gonna get married, it doesn't matter if I get married, blah, 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 marriage is not good, it's a distraction, women are a distraction, whatever.
Women are just, I've heard that.
Yes. Then there's I am not gonna be fulfilled until or unless I get married.
Yeah.
Like I am on the prowl for a wife. Somebody actually said this one time.
On the prowl for a wife.
No one said that to me, but that's kind of the vibe. But someone told me one time that he wants to be married in 2 years, and every day that he is not in a serious relationship, that 2 years is being pushed back. He's like, every day that I'm not like dating somebody,
oh my god,
my timeline is being pushed.
Oh, he has an agenda. Like he's
really... no, he's like on it, and like that's just kind of that's the other extreme of it. Is this is the only thing I will think about, pray about, and I am not complete, and I'm failing unless I am married or have a girlfriend or whatever it is, and making an idol out of it, and then still not having a good view of marriage, in that you think somehow that marriage is going to be this perfect utopia. I'm going to always have somebody to come home to. I'm not going to be lonely and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you still get lonely. You're going to probably be frustrated with them more than you will not be. And it's another human being. But that's not the point. Like, that's the thing, is that the person that says, I'm not getting married because it's too hard, and the person that says, I'm getting married because it's going to be this perfect world, it's like, no. The point of marriage, the point of vocation, the point of life, the point of everything is to be purified and to become holy.
Right.
And in becoming holy, we have to suffer. Like that's not a option. It's not a maybe you will. You know, it's like some
will.
No, you will. You have to. That's the whole point.
Some less than others, but
Exactly. If Jesus had to die, you know, like Jesus was sent on earth as sacrifice to show us the way to heaven and to die for us. What makes you think you'll be spared of suffering? You know, it's like, no, yeah, you get married and you, yes, look forward to that. Yes, aspire to that. See the beauty in that. However, it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be, it's not bad if it's difficult, because then
yeah,
you're
it's
probably
not
doing
bad if
something
it's
right.
difficult, and I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of people get confused. A lot of young people, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know, just really tough stuff. And I think a lot of it comes from just wounds. Men haven't really been allowed to share their feelings, so they don't even, like, a lot of the times they wouldn't even acknowledge that something's going wrong in the first place. And so, like, a lot of these, they're just taught to suck it up. So even in these marriages where that's kind of that's the, what's the word, vibe that they're going for, the struggle that they're going with,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to say anything about it and or communicate. And that's, I think, a huge thing for young people in general, but I imagine men probably struggle more than we do, because we could at least share what we think
Yeah.
with each other and stuff like that without the cultural barrier there. But also I respect that there's a masculinity to having a threshold, or like a limit to how much you will share. I feel like we're free to do that because we're being protected, like,
Yeah.
you know, theoretically or biologically. Whereas men, as protectors, probably do have to hold some of that stuff to like, but I think what could be such a good like facet for men with those emotions is, like, yeah, you don't have to put your burdens on other people because you're like the protector, and that's hard to be, like, maintain that protecting and leadership role while also, like,
Yeah.
airing out all your struggles and stuff, but leaning on the Lord instead, like teaching young men how to take their troubles to the Lord and not suck it in, not deal with it on their own, but like, that's the one place that you could air out your wounds and stuff like that, and it will only strengthen your leadership skills and strengthen your masculinity. I imagine. I'm not a man, so I don't really know, but I would imagine that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think if I think about my own struggles and wounds with dating and other things, it's self-esteem and stuff. It's because growing up, I didn't really feel like I had anyone to go to with my feelings. Of course, my family is very loving, but different generations have different ideas about how to share emotions and how to deal with emotions. And for sure, my generation had a different idea of that from my parents. And so, like, there wasn't a lot that I could take to them that I felt like, oh, they would understand. And so I kept a lot of it in, and I didn't know how to go to God about it. And so it festered and turned into wounds that I carry sometimes to this day.
Yeah.
And if we could teach young people to do that, they would carry a lot less baggage into these relationships and into these marriages. They'd carry a lot less expectations, like unwarranted expectations on their significant other, if they could lean on the Lord instead of trying to lean on another human being, if they learn that from a young age. But we're not really taught that, unfortunately. And then even when you learn it, actually doing it is a whole other thing.
Because when you're young and you have these, like feelings, you have these cravings, and then you meet someone who you can talk to about these things, and you you make that person Christ, because what you've been looking for was Christ.
Right.
And then you go into that cycle we said earlier where you realize this person can't fill this hole because they weren't made to fill this hole. No. But neither can the next person. And so all men suck. Therefore, all men suck.
Yeah.
Because they can't be Jesus. And then maybe you have a conversion and you're like, men still can't be Jesus. So therefore, I'm never going to get married. I'm going to focus all my energies on Jesus.
Yeah, I'm going to marry Jesus.
Yeah.
Because all men can. Which, I mean, if you're called to that, awesome.
Great.
But I see that on both sides. Like, have you ever encountered guys who are like, you don't live up to Jesus, so like, yeah, I'd rather be a priest because you're not perfect like Jesus. It's like, I can't compare. I can't compete with the Lord. I'm never gonna, and that's why like marrying the Lord is for a whole different purpose and it's a whole different calling.
Yeah.
You can't compare the two because you're like getting involved with this flawed human being is meant to bring out your wounds, is meant to challenge you, is meant to make you sacrifice. Whereas Jesus will never, like a relationship with Jesus will never do that to you.
Yeah.
Like he will never fail you.
Yeah.
Whereas like we're supposed, in a sense, kind of we fail each other to make each other stronger in a sense. But if you're approaching it from that perspective, it's not gonna really work. So yeah. How are you coming along with your...
I'm coming along. Yeah, I don't know. It's not what I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Oh no, I had hoped this would be like a good experience for you. I didn't know.
It's an experience. I'm growing in something. In one of the virtues.
Perseverance.
I guess so. Humility. I don't know. It's just like humbling. Like, wow.
That
is one heck of a whatever.
You're so funny.
The John. Yeah.
I'm sure you're doing great.
Wow, you're doing great. But I mean, obviously, like this is my first time.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've lamented. We spend a lot of time lamenting about the struggles of dating. But like, there's lots of struggles. There's lots of reasons or theories. Because I mean, we don't obviously know. We're not experts. But lots of theories as to why things are the way they are, why people are struggling. But like, there's always hope because God is in control. Like, it's not like we're in this awful time and something's going wrong. Like, no, the Lord is allowing us to be in this time for a reason. So how do we become people of our time? How do we?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say? Like, one tip?
To be intentional with each other. And honestly, what I would say is to be honest with yourself and with God and with the people that you are interested in or whatever it is, because that is the only way that you will get to, if you are honest with yourself, that's the only way you will get to truth and to the truth of what God has intended you for. God, I want to be loved, but I want to be loved by the right person in the right way, in a way that honors my dignity and the dignity of the other person. And in doing that, and in like every step of your journey, like always just being honest with yourself and with God, you will get to the place that you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you will find that person that you're supposed to be with, and you will have the courage to pursue whoever it is that you are wanting to pursue. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, I get it.
That's kind of what I think.
Like, being honest is
because you have to, and you also have to be honest with like where you are in your journey of like, these are the things I struggle with, God. These are the things that would inhibit me from being in a place where I could, pursue somebody or whatever it is. And not pretend like you're fine and then never deal with it. Because then you probably, it'll be a lot harder for you to get to that place.
I have like two things that I would say. So the second thing has to do kind of with my card. So I'll explain that afterwards. But the first thing would be like find out what marriage is, like educate yourself. You might think you know what it is. I promise you, it's unless you've read the catechism, unless you've learned a little bit about theology of the body, it's highly likely that you may have a few misconceptions. If you've been dating if the way you've been dating looks kind of like a Netflix show, then even the most wholesome Netflix relationship, it's not, chances are it doesn't align with the values that we have for marriage.
Ends at the first kiss.
Literally. Like just, so I talked to the girls about it. I'm like, okay, girls, because most of the girls that I've encountered in youth ministry or teaching them religion, most of them are very modest. Like they balk at the idea of like one night stands and stuff like that. Yeah. But when I ask them, okay, tell me the plot of any Netflix show, what happens? The guy meets the girl, they have this wonderful date, then what? And then they go home. And they're telling me the plot. Then they go home and they spend the night and they fall madly in love and then they eventually live together. And then the climax of the movie happens where they have to break up for whatever reason. Then they get back together in the end and then they live happily ever after in a common law union or something like that. If any part of your relationship even remotely resembles that, of like getting together too quickly or, falling into sin with somebody or, thinking about living with this person before you get married, even something as simple as getting too intimate, like even just kissing really early on in the relationship, getting very physically intimate and attached to this person really early on, chances are you might be missing something about like what we're discerning here, what we're actually discerning. We're not discerning how attracted we are to this guy. Like that's a part of it for sure. We're not discerning how compatible we are with this guy. Yes, that's a part of it for sure. But what we're discerning is, are we called to marry this person? And there's certain scenarios that whether we're compatible with the person, whether we're attracted to the person, that does not mean that we should be with that person, that God is calling us to be with that person. And that has to be the forefront of what we're doing. So like that would be my advice to people. Just go find out what the catechism teaches on marriage. Look up what biblical marriages look like. And I would say to look at it with the lens of God knows better than we do, because it's hard to look at that stuff when you haven't looked at it for a very long time. When you look at the biblical version of marriage compared to the secular version, to the worldly version of marriage, like it looks kind of scary. Like even hearing a Christian wife proclaim on TV that she's proud to be submissive to her husband. Honestly, that shocks some people, even though as Christians, like we know that's what we're called to be as women. Now, obviously that doesn't mean subservient, and there's a whole bunch of nuances to it, but really, and at the end of the day, this is what God is calling us to do. So make sure you have a good idea of what God is actually calling you to when it comes to dating and discerning marriage, I think. But there's such a balance to it though, because I don't think like women should be able to pursue if they want to. You do what you want, obviously, but I think it is better off when from the get-go a man is showing that he has leadership skills and that if he sees something that he wants, he will get it. I think that's very attractive. But I think especially in the current climate that we live in, it's not easy for a man to just go and talk to a girl and approach her. That would be some advice that I would say. Guys,
Go approach girls.
I would encourage you. Yes, I know my heart goes out to the guys because girls are not nice to them. Like so many of my friends, not gonna name names, not you. So many of my friends really like make fun of guys when they come. I'm like, oh, he came and asked me on a date and he was so weird. But I'm like, do you recognize how like nerve-wracking that is for a guy to go up to you and ask you on a date? Be nicer to guys. But guys, on the other hand, yes, it takes a lot of courage. I get it, but it's worth it in the end. Don't waste time. Ask her on a date or spend more time with her. Like go, if she's in the youth ministry, go to that youth ministry. She's in a prayer group, join that prayer group. Invite her out for coffee. Bring her some coffee. You know, you could make it less weird, and I'm sure there's things on the internet you could do. But yeah, like have courage to do it. And women, be nice to men when they come. Like, oh, I tell the girls this all the time. Like, if a guy likes you, don't play with his little heart. Like, that's like how villains are created when women like break a guy's heart. Like, you have this innocent little guy who's saving up money to buy a ring, and he gives it to a cute little, you know, not like a ring, just like a cute little piece of jewelry. And she's just like, oh, I don't want that. Just don't be that girl. Like, very graciously and charitably let guys down if you have to.
Yeah.
But recognize the valor. Is valor a word? Yes. Valor, the bravery that it takes for them to come do that, especially in this day and age where they're not taught how to do this stuff. They're just figuring out, trying their best for the Lord, because like they have these genuine intentions. Some of them are more intense than others. Be gracious, like just reverence their, I guess this is coming into what I'm painting here. So like, this is what I'm gonna say. Like my Bible verse that I chose was where God tells Moses to take off his sandals because he's coming on holy ground. And I think it was JP2 who said like, no, it was probably Pope Francis. This is much more of a Pope Francis thing. It's like, take off your sandals at the holy ground that is another person. I'm paraphrasing, but when you encounter anybody in the dating space, they're not collateral. They are not a stepping stone to get where you're going. And I've been tempted to do that, to treat people like, oh, I'm wasting my time with this person. No, like God is bringing that person in your life. God is bringing that random guy who like looks at you weird in church and he's asking you on a date. God is bringing that guy into your life, and he's teaching you and him something through that, even if you guys aren't destined to be married. So take off your sandals at the holy ground in another person. Like Jesus lives in that person. That person is a living tabernacle. Reverence that person. Be charitable with that person. And if you don't end up marrying them, at least leave them in such a state that they are not wounded for the next person that you send them off to. Like, leave people either the same way you found them or better. Like, don't break anyone's stride. It's a battlefield out here. We're all struggling. Be nice to people. That would be my So like in the end, you'll see like my drawing, my painting has to do with that.
I don't know how. I think I found out about this book from the Lila Rose podcast.
Yeah, me too.
I saw that podcast and I was like, no, this is my entire view of dating has been challenged. Like everything was just flipped on its head.
It's very practical. It's kind of like, it takes theology of the body kind of and just applies it rather. Like, how does this look in the actual dating process? And it doesn't go so much into the theology of it, but it's just like, all right, how do we actually date as Catholics? And so many people don't understand there is a way to date as Catholics. If because we're headed for a different goal. We can't date like secular people because we're not headed for the same goal that they are. You know, and that's just a fact. That's just a reality. They have a different idea of marriage. Our idea is different, and we need, so like these tips, and I have it here. I have a very funny short story of how I acquired this. So yeah, this is the book. Where do I? Yeah. It's pretty good Catholic. How to Find, Date, and Marry Someone Who Shares Your Faith by Rachel Hoover Canto. And her story is interesting too. So I went to Knock Shrine in Ireland and I was doing adoration there. Oh yeah, I told you the story. Okay, let me tell you, Justin. So I was at Knock Shrine and minding my own business, worshiping the Lord, and there was adoration at the end. There was a procession. At the end of the procession, I knelt for the benediction, and like no one else knelt. It was like literally just me and two other old ladies of like the hundreds of people who were there. But anyway, so I knelt and then I stood up after the benediction and I started walking off to the gift shop. And this one guy, he's just like, where do I know you from? And I'm like, I'm certain you don't know me from anywhere because I am not Irish. Evidently, I'm from Belize, but that was his way. So that's a little easy way to go and talk to girls. It's like, where do I know you from? And so we start talking and then the conversation dies down and I was like, well, anyway, see you later. It's been so nice talking to you. And I start walking away and I hear like in a distance, hey, Ashley. He's like, I'd like to keep in contact with you. Can we keep talking? That's the whole funny part of it. Well, kind of. The funny goes into a little sad. We did continue talking for a while and it was really nice, but I think we discerned that it wasn't right in the end. And he had talked about sending me a book. And so even after we stopped talking, he's like, can I still send you the book? And I'm like, I'd rather you didn't. Please he's like, no, I said I would, so I'll send you the book. What's your address? Blah, blah, blah.
He shows up at your doorstep.
Oh, I kind of wished. I was like, maybe things could work out if you pulled like a 80s, 90s rom-com with a boom. Oh, man, I'm all for it. Like, my advice to guys. All right, no, maybe this just applies to me. Other girls would be freaked out. But, like, don't underestimate a rom-com gesture. I'm just saying it's underrated in this day and age. But anyway, he did not show up with a boombox. But he did send me. Pretty good Catholic. And it's been so good reading it. I am not finished with it because I'm a delinquent. But just what I've read so far. Even, like, I've spoken to young people who are dating, like, high school age, and even the part where she talks about 3 months, like for 3 months, like talk to this person, get to know that person, be friends with that person, don't get exclusive with that person too quick. I was talking to a young person and they were like not for it. They were not having it. They were like, 3 months is too long. Because, you know, when you're 16, you have no time. You need to get this done right now. Like, no, like we're going to die if we don't get together and love each other. And I'm like, girl, you have time. But anyway, they were complaining about the 3 months. But the Lord made it so that just certain circumstances were in place that they couldn't get in an official relationship for about 2 months. And after those 2 months, certain things started to come to light that it didn't make the person like cut off the other person and say, oh, I don't want to date you. But it made them think, like, are we actually compatible? And I was like, how long has it been since you guys started talking? She's like, 2 months. I'm like, and how long did I say you were supposed to wait? And you thought 2 months was so long. And so it's like their eyes were opened of like, no, this is actually very practical. When we do things God's way, which seems like the harder way, we protect ourselves because like 3 months sounds like an eternity to a high schooler. We know 3 months is nothing. But it's prudent and it helps you in the long run because like even if you get together after that 3 months, like you know for sure, like you've done the due diligence, you've checked and you've done what you're supposed to do. So
Yeah.
that highly recommend.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I really liked it because she she just was very realistic with it and like down to earth, and that sometimes I feel like in like chastity books or talks or whatever, it's all about the don'ts, or it's all about the this is what to avoid or whatever.
Yeah.
But in her book, it's like, no, this is how to get married. This is how to find the person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think even in the like chastity book realm, or I guess I'll say the like chastity, Catholic chastity like movement, the idea can be perpetuated, which is not the intention obviously, but it can be perpetuated, that you have to hold, like you're praying for this perfect person and you just keep praying, and then one day like this person will show up and it's perfect and you'll just connect and it'll click. I like her because she was just like, no, we want to get married, you know, we want to have the
No, you're fine.
we want to have that like that's the goal. It's a good desire. Don't pretend like you don't have that desire, and also don't feel like you have to wait around for this like person to fall from the sky. She's like, no, be proactive about it, do things about it. And also I like her idea of like is it default to yes kind of thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you don't have a type, like
Yeah, you don't have a
you
test.
don't
So
have a type.
important.
Like, those are two things that I kind of took away from it, was like default to yes, because personally I think that if a guy has the courage to pursue you and to be intentional with you, then that tells you something about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably better than the guy that you are pining for that will never do anything.
I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've either met a guy, been attracted to him, and then he starts talking and then I'm like, no, or not really been attracted to a guy and then he starts talking and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
there's something here. And so like, it's so, I love that, and this is the formation that people used to have. Like, you didn't have to read a book to know how to date. Like, people would have just known, like in society, this is how people used to date.
Yeah.
And a lot of these practices were just expected. You didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
But this is where we've come.
What's the other thing I said? Default to yes, and you don't have a type. Oh yeah, you don't have a type of like that girl. Like she talks about Rachel Burkham's the author. She talks about how her husband was not the type of guy she would have gone for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said something like tattoos. Like she wasn't really a guy going for guys with tattoos, which I love a good tattoo, but not endorsing it necessarily. But just my personal, don't mind.
Like there's some superficial things
that people get
oh my
fixated
gosh.
on, which it's not like you don't eliminate your preferences, but don't make that the deciding factor. Like, first values, first faith, how he treats you, all of that, whether you like him or not, like you enjoy his company, and then start thinking of like, okay, how tall is he? You know, is he 5'8"? Like, can I deal with that? Blah, blah, blah. Like, all those things are so unnecessary to the goal that we're striving for.
Because as girls, if a guy were to be like, I'm not dating that girl because she's too tall, or she doesn't like, she's not blonde, or whatever. Oh my gosh, we'd be up in arms.
We hate when they do that. They do that sometimes, but we hate when they do it. So we shouldn't do the same thing to them, I think.
Exactly. And like as long as they have the virtue and the qualities that you are looking for.
Yeah.
Wow, Ashley, you're like you give that's something you give to someone you love.
I'll see. Well, I'll give it to you. But like, because also reverence yourself, like on your holy ground. And I think like we need, as we go out into the dating world, I'll write a litl proper note in it. But yeah. So do you see like the actual image?
Girl, what the heck? Girl.
But do you get it? Like, okay, what do you see in the image?
Stop, wait. Stop. How did you do that? Oh my gosh. How did you do that?
You see it?
Do you see it? As Justin would say, wicked.
What do you see, Justin? Okay.
I'm hoping that's
A+, yes. Burning bush. What else? Do you see anything else?
like the pieces of like embers.
Mhm.
burning up.
If you look closely at the flame, there's the
Like a
intent
person.
is that there's two people facing each other. Like this silhouette.
You see, that's the nose.
Right. Explain it to the camera.
That's the eye. Is that right? That's like the eyebrow, like the eyes. That's a nose for the dude. That's his mouth and his chin. And then this is like the girl.
I see the
Her
noses.
nose, her lips, her
Yeah.
chin.
Because it's supposed to be very subtle, because it's still supposed to look like a flame.
Yeah.
So it's like two people. That was the intent.
That's beautiful.
I did a couple samples, and maybe you could see it in
samples are
these
amazing
ones.
in detail.
Yeah.
The wicked.
So like this one, you may be able to see it a little bit better. Yeah. But I didn't like how it didn't look as subtle in this one. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I like
anyhow.
the subtlety of it. I love
Yeah.
it. You can't see it until you see it.
Until you see it, and then you're like, wait, what? Well, good. I'm glad you love it since it's yours. It's a little rough around the edges, literally. So yeah, but yeah, it's such a good reminder. I actually like your color combination, the contrast. It's very bright. And for your first watercolor ever, I think you did great. Saint Joseph, pray for us. Is that a lily?
Yeah, it is a lily.
Yeah.
So okay, I love Saint Joseph. He is my icon.
Oh yeah.
But there was this time where I was, or I guess, yeah, I don't know, in praying about like my vocation and my future and stuff. A time where I was praying about it and I was asking Mary for help, and she told me, or I felt like her telling me, like, this is something for Saint Joseph. Like, go to Saint Joseph with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of healing that needed to be done in my own heart when it came to the way that I saw marriage and the way that I saw dating, because it's like Mary was married, you know, and she was a good wife.
Yeah.
And she was a good mother. And she was also perfectly united to God and was the perfect servant. And her whole heart belonged to God, but she was still, like, that didn't mean that she neglected Joseph. That
Right.
doesn't mean she neglected
Right.
Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And she definitely didn't see Christ or Saint Joseph as an obstacle
Yeah.
to her holiness. And so, in just asking, like, Saint Joseph, like, to be that person that, in his masculinity, to bring out the femininity that I am meant to live, and to teach me and what good masculinity is, and heal anything that I may have believed about marriage or about the complementarity of man and woman or about men, that it prepares me for whatever it is that I am supposed to have in my future, whatever my vocation is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like last time we were talking, I was like, Saint Joseph, for sure. And then the quote is something about purity. I don't know. Wait, I have to find that.
No, I think people don't look at Mary's marriage and her as a wife enough. Like, they see her as mother, and she is, but she was also a wife, and she also put her all into that, and that was a part of her holiness and how she achieved holiness.
Exactly.
And if the mother of God could submit to a man, then
Yeah.
I'm sure we could too. I'm sure.
Exactly.
A quiet guy too, not a man of many words.
So true.
Yeah. He led with action and
Yeah, he wasn't a pushover either. Like, he
Yeah.
still led, but
Right.
he did it with humility.
yeah. Have you been to Knock Shrine?
I think I love Knox Shrine because it just shows every member of the Holy Family in their divine role. Like it's almost like a portrait of the Holy Family, the way they all appeared. And John the evangelist is there, the adopted son. And he's looking towards the people, so that's his divine role. And Mary is looking towards God because that's her divine role. And Joseph is bowing his head toward Mary because that's his divine role. And then Jesus is literally the Lamb of God, like literally a lamb in front of the cross. So like it's a portrait of the Holy Family, but just showing each one in their divine role. So it's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, the verse that I chose was, "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of love." And I guess, I don't know, the keep your heart with all vigilance, like you have to be mindful of what it is that is in your heart. You have to be paying attention to those things, because that is where you're going to realize what it is that God made you for.
For sure. Like, focus on leading your heart towards God, having a pure heart, and vigilance, like focusing on that rather than figuring out what's the perfect way to meet the perfect guy and are we compatible and stuff. Like that stuff comes afterwards, for sure. Well, what do I know?
So that's my little card.
I think it's great. I think it's very cute. It's cute. I actually like it. No, I do.
Thanks. My Lily.
I can't believe we got this done.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously we could talk all day about dating because I do think this is how the devil is targeting our community, but
for sure.
I
I
think
think we covered like a lot.
covered a
lot of things that we.
One thing I want to encourage people to do is like get the book, go see Theology of the Body Institute on YouTube. Matt Fradd, what are some other ones that just talk about holy Catholic dating? There's so many. Maybe we could put them in the description. Father Mike Schmitz, for sure. Look up his talk at Seek.
Jackie and Bobby.
Angel, Jackie and Bobby Angel. So many people, so many good people. Type Catholic dating in YouTube. And if you're at all confused, or why do Catholics believe this, and why do we have to do that, and just educate yourself. Pick up the catechism or find it online, like what is marriage? What constitutes a valid marriage? Am I living that out? And if I'm dating, am I seeking that out? Like the information's out there. It's never been easier to get information. Just make sure you're getting it from the right source, not from what people think the Catholic Church says, but what the Catholic Church actually says. Yeah. And it's really beautiful. So, yeah. I think we're in good hands. So you want to say a little prayer? We could end in prayer.
Let's do that. Do you want to lead the prayer?
Sure. Okay, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, we bless you and we praise you and we thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to talk about your holy vocation of marriage, to hopefully inspire people through your words, using your words to seek you out in all things that they do, especially in their vocation, whether it be to religious life or to marriage. We pray that you bless every single person who is watching this, all those who are unable to watch this. Bless all the young people who are pursuing a vocation in marriage or discerning their vocation in general. Dear Lord, please be with them, guide them, and help them to have the courage to do what they must when they hear the call. Protect all young people from the snares of the devil, the ways that he's trying to mislead all of us. You know our efforts. You know that we desire to serve you and to love you. You know that we struggle in doing so. Give us the strength and the grace to always do your holy will, even when it is difficult to do so. We ask this through the intercession of our Mother as we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
This episode.
I
Thank you
had so much
I had
fun. So much fun.
Yeah, so I hope everyone else had fun watching this. Please stay tuned for other episodes of Beyond Basic, and I hope to see you again.
Yeah.
Bye.